In my past life, on the day my sister and I attended the Witch Covenant's mate selection ceremony, I saved a fallen vampire prince. To repay his debt, the prince immediately announced upon returning to his clan that I would become his future bride. A year later, I gave birth to a pure-blood heir, the only successor in the entire vampire race. The prince was overjoyed. On the day of his coronation as regent, he completed the blood contract with me, making me his eternal companion and queen. From then on, I was revered by all races. Meanwhile, my sister chose to marry a powerful werewolf leader, only to become the most insignificant among his many lovers. Her jealousy drove her to madness. During a witch's full moon festival, she pushed me off a cliff, leaving me to die from the fall. When I opened my eyes again, my sister was already running toward where the vampire prince had fallen on the day of the mate selection ceremony. I knew she had been reborn too, but she didn't know that becoming the prince's bride was easy. Winning his heart and bearing his child, however, was nearly impossible. A witch's power stems from desire. This is an ancient law inscribed in our bloodline. Once a witch comes of age, the powerful magic within becomes restless, craving union with a strong partner to achieve balance. Otherwise, the long nights would be consumed by uncontrolled magic turning against us. The Covenant elders, fearing we might indulge recklessly and invite unnecessary trouble, decreed that our first task upon coming of age was to select suitable partners, strengthening relationships with other races through marriage. Today we had just arrived at the altar, not yet having time to properly observe the various males before us. The girl beside me gently nudged me. On our way here, I saw your sister Ella running frantically toward the shadow forest. No one could stop her. Isn't she participating in the ceremony? At these words, I immediately understood. It seemed I wasn't the only one reborn. My dear sister had apparently returned from the previous life as well. Her urgent rush toward the shadow forest was likely for her dream of royal glory and wealth. Before I could respond, a fierce wind suddenly arose outside, and dark clouds gathered in the sky. In an instant, darkness fell. Several magnificent black gold carriages pulled by nightmare beasts descended from above, and vampire emissaries appeared before us, announcing the prince's decree. My heart sank. Having experienced this before, I knew this was Prince Alexander coming to claim his savior as his bride. In my past life, my sister had deliberately made things difficult for me, sending me to the shadow forest to gather moonflowers for her. Unexpectedly, through a twist of fate, I stumbled upon a man who had been ambushed by enemies and lay unconscious on the ground. Originally, I intended to use a witch's life energy to revive him while satisfying my most primal desires. To my surprise, upon awakening, he gave me the vampire regent's signet ring. Not only did he reveal his identity as a vampire prince, but he also directly announced through bloodline communication that I would be his future companion. Our witch covenant held neither high nor low status. We had never received such honor. Naturally, I had no choice in the matter. My fate was decided within a few words. Though vampires are lords of the night, they harbor unknown secrets. To nurture a pure-blood heir, the mother must use her own life essence as nourishment for the fetus to absorb. The vampire bloodline power is particularly domineering. Ordinary females from other races simply cannot withstand it. Most die from life force depletion after a few months of pregnancy, taking both lives. But by chance I survived. I directly gave birth to the only pure-blood heir of this vampire generation. The vampire regent was overjoyed and immediately formed an eternal blood contract with me. Decades later, when Alexander inherited the regent's position, I naturally became his only queen, enjoying endless wealth and glory. Meanwhile, my sister, who had chosen the werewolf leader, discovered he was promiscuous with many lovers. She could never become his sole moon companion. Seeing him only once a month, how could that satisfy her nature as a witch? She washed her face with tears daily, living in unbearable pain. Finally, on the day of the witch's full moon festival, she lured me to a cliff's edge and pushed me over. I'll never forget that dying despair. Suddenly, surrounded by Covenant elders, Alexander appeared before everyone holding my sister's hand, his face full of affection. Ella is kind-hearted. She saved me in the forest. From now on, she is my chosen bride. Following protocol, I knelt down. My sister looked down at the crowd with barely concealed triumph. However, where she couldn't see, the corners of my mouth curved slightly upward. Dear sister, since you're so eager to die, I suppose I'll have to grant your wish. The vampire prince's wedding was 100 times more important than our mate selection ceremony. My sister and I, along with several witch companions, were brought to the vampire's shadow castle, forbidden to leave even a single step, to focus entirely on preparing everything for my sister's pre-wedding arrangements. Stroking the blood crystal necklace that Alex had specially sent over, I felt nothing in my heart. Though beautiful, this thing was nothing more than a death charm in my eyes. In my previous life, the rewards I received were 100 times more magnificent than my sister's. Every word and action of mine was even imitated by other women across the continent. But behind it all, Only I knew how much I suffered trying to give birth to the child in my womb. Before I could examine it closely, a maid from my sister's side hurried over to me. "Miss Lila, Her Future Highness requests your presence." "She wants to see me?" At this time, shouldn't my sister be preparing her wedding dress? Why would she think of her insignificant sister? Though I still had some doubts, she was now the prince's publicly acknowledged fiancée, and I had no power to resist her words. As soon as I reached my sister's room, I saw Alex with his shirt open, looking completely satisfied as he walked out from inside. I quickly lowered my head. He didn't even glance at me. His scent was all too familiar. That unique aroma vampires emit after passion, a mixture of blood and roses. I knew my sister had already slept with him. There was no helping it. After witches come of age, they often lose control of themselves. Once they touch a man they desire, they can't help but draw closer. This was our fatal weakness. My sister lay half reclined on the bed with a smile, covered only by a thin silk sheet that did nothing to conceal her alluring figure. Seeing me enter, her expression instantly darkened. She slowly extended one finger, pointing at the embroidery pattern on the table. "You embroidered this? Very good." I didn't dare move. Since childhood, she had beaten and scolded me at will. Why would she be so kind as to praise me now? Moreover, thinking of how she had pushed me from the precipice in my previous life, my heart began beating uncontrollably. Seeing I didn't move, she suddenly sat up from the bed. She grabbed the silver candlestick beside her and hurled it viciously at my head. Blood blurred my vision as I forced down my inner rage and knelt on the ground. She seemed quite satisfied with my reaction and spoke lazily. "I brought you all here to watch carefully how I obtained all of this step by step. You'd better put away those restless thoughts and stop hovering around the prince, or else." I looked up to meet my sister's gaze. "As you wish, Your Highness." She was momentarily shocked by the calmness in my eyes, then walked over and grabbed my hair. "Lila, do you think I don't know that you've been reborn too?" Hearing the word reborn, a flash of darkness crossed my eyes. She snorted coldly and threw the embroidery pattern in my face. "You grew up in the witch's forest. How could you embroider the blood rose emblem that only the vampire queen can use? You still dare to lie to me?" I sighed softly and stood up from the ground, supporting my forehead. "Sister, I never wanted to compete with you. And I absolutely won't appear before the prince." But she just laughed mockingly, her fingers caressing my face. "Do you think I would lose to an ugly girl like you? Even if you wanted to compete, you couldn't beat me." I fell silent. Some things I didn't fight for, because I wanted to live longer. Only fools would obsess over such beautiful poison. The Blood clan truly lived up to their reputation as distinguished ancient nobility. Even a simple engagement ceremony was conducted with such grandeur. Not only did many mysterious supernatural beings attend the ceremony, but they also brought numerous treasures as gifts, showing tremendous respect for their dignity. My sister appeared in a bright red wedding dress. Her face flushed as she held Alex's hand, making her entrance under everyone's expectant gaze. She had finally achieved the position she'd always dreamed of, and her happiness was written all over her face. When she saw me, she even tilted her head provocatively and silently mouthed two words. "Useless." Well, I am useless. But she was about to step into hell. I wondered who was more pitiful. Her smile didn't last long though. Alex pressed a goblet into her hands. "Drink this, and our engagement will be officially sealed under the witness of all the elders." My sister eagerly took it, ready to drain it in one gulp, when a sharp metallic scent wafted from the cup. She turned pale with shock and instinctively threw the goblet away. "Why is there holy silver powder in this wine?" Holy silver was the bane of our witch magic. Even grand wizards who had practiced for 1,000 years couldn't withstand the power of a cup of holy silver wine. One sip wouldn't kill you, but it would temporarily dispel your magic and leave you bedridden for months in agony. In my previous life, I faced the same situation, but I never thought to refuse. I knew my life was worthless compared to the Blood clan's reputation. If I embarrassed Alex in front of everyone, our relationship would forever remain purely transactional. I forced myself to drink it, and throughout the entire ceremony, my head was spinning. But he didn't care about my feelings at all. After all, in his eyes, I was just a tool for repaying debts and bearing offspring. Who cares about a tool's emotions? But my sister clearly didn't understand the situation. She pouted and threw herself into Alex's arms, acting coquettish. "I don't want to drink this." She didn't notice that Alex's expression had darkened. Given all the guests present, he still tried to coax her patiently. "Ella, this is an ancient Blood clan tradition. Don't be willful in front of so many people." Logically, when the noble Blood prince himself said this, my sister should have backed down. But as if oblivious to the approaching danger, she continued to refuse. "I hate this stupid tradition. We witches despise holy silver the most. I never want to see it again." This statement completely enraged the Blood clan elders present. They viewed drinking their partner's bane as a symbol of loyalty and conquest. My sister's words were tantamount to slapping them in the face. Sure enough, several Blood Clan nobles began quietly complaining that the bride didn't know proper etiquette, even questioning Alex's judgment. When these murmurs reached Alex's ears, his patience was completely exhausted, and his voice carried icy fury. "I'll say this one more time, drink it." My sister was terrified, never expecting him to treat her this way. She quickly picked up the holy silver wine and drained it in one gulp. But it was too late. Everyone's mood had already been ruined. After completing the ceremony, Alex stormed off without even sparing her a glance. My sister stood there bewildered. Just yesterday they had been so affectionate. How could they turn against each other over a cup of holy silver wine? I let out a cold laugh. She was too naive. Nothing was more important than the Blood Clan's dignity. A bride meant to be decorative actually thought she could influence the prince's will. This was just the beginning. Her good days were yet to come. The holy silver wine incident was just the first crack in the pristine glass of Ella's dream. For the next 3 weeks, my sister was confined to her opulent chambers in the Shadow Castle. The holy silver had scorched her magical pathways, leaving her bedridden, feverish, and convulsing with pain. Witches and holy silver were fundamentally incompatible. The metal stripped away our natural defenses, making every breath feel like inhaling shattered glass. In my past life, I had endured this agony in silence, biting my lip until it bled so as not to disturb the prince. I understood that my survival depended on my stoicism. Ella, however, lacked such fortitude. Her screams echoed through the stone corridors of the West Wing day and night. She threw antique vases, cursed the maids, and constantly demanded that Alex come to her side. But the vampire prince, notoriously intolerant of weakness and noise, never visited her once. He merely sent his physician with cold suppressants and ordered the guards to keep her doors shut. Lila, you wretched thing, get in here." I pushed open the heavy oak doors, keeping my gaze lowered. The room smelled of sweat, decaying magic, and the metallic tang of vampire medicines. Ella looked awful. Her previously radiant skin was pale and clammy, and her eyes were sunken. "Where is he?" she hissed, grabbing my wrist with surprisingly weak fingers. "Where is Alex? I am his fiancé. He should be here, holding my hand, feeding me his blood to heal me." "His Highness is attending a council meeting with the elders," I replied evenly, pulling my wrist free. "The Blood Clan values duty above all. You would do well to rest, sister." "Shut up," she shrieked, her chest heaving. "You're laughing at me, aren't you? You think because I drank that poison, I've lost his favor? You're wrong. Once I give him an heir, I will be the most powerful woman in this world. They will all kneel to me." I looked at her, truly looking at the madness dancing in her feverish eyes, and felt nothing but profound pity mixed with disgust. "Then I wish you a swift recovery, Your Highness," I said smoothly, bowing before turning to leave. I had no time to entertain a dying woman's delusions. I had my own survival to secure. Chapter 2. The Moonshade Herb. A witch's power stems from desire. As the full moon approached, the magic in my veins began to simmer, demanding release, demanding a partner. The Covenant elders taught us that the only way to soothe this fire was to submit to a powerful male of another race. But I had lived a lifetime already. I knew the truth. Submission was a lie created to keep witches dependent and subjugated. There was another way to soothe the burn of our magic, a rare flora known as the Moonshade Herb, which grew only in the deepest, most dangerous parts of the Shadow Forest. In my past life, I was too imprisoned by my pregnancy and Alex's possessiveness to seek it out. Now I was a mere shadow in the castle, unnoticed and free to slip away. Under the cloak of darkness, I left the castle grounds. The Shadow Forest was a labyrinth of twisted roots and glowing fungi, crawling with creatures that would gladly tear a lone witch apart. But I navigated it with the precision of a ghost, my memories guiding me past the territorial markers of the lesser beasts. Finally, in a clearing bathed in the silver light of the moon, I saw it, the luminescent, silver-blue petals of the moonshade. I knelt to harvest it, careful not to touch the toxic stem. Just as my silver knife severed the root, a low, rumbling growl vibrated through the earth beneath my knees. That is a dangerous flower for a little witch to be picking in the dark. I froze, then slowly stood and turned. Stepping out from the tree-line was a man of staggering proportions. He was shirtless, his torso covered in ancient runic scars, with eyes that glowed like molten amber in the dark. I recognized him instantly. Kalen, the Leaken King, the werewolf leader my sister had married in our past life. The man she had deemed a promiscuous brute, simply because she never bothered to understand pack dynamics, confusing his protective familial bonds with his female generals for infidelity. Kalen was a fierce, loyal leader, but he required a mate who was a true equal, an alpha in her own right, not a vain, whining princess. "Your Majesty," I said, offering a respectful but shallow curtsy. "I meant no disrespect to your hunting grounds. I merely require this herb for my health." Kalen stepped closer, the sheer primal energy rolling off him making the witch fire in my blood instinctively flare, then settle into a strange, purring calm. He wasn't a cold, blood-sucking corpse like Alex. He was life, heat and raw power. He tilted his head, sniffing the air. You are from the Covenant. But you don't smell like the desperation they usually reek of. You smell like ice and survival. His amber eyes narrowed. You're the sister of the vampire's new plaything. I am Lila, I corrected firmly. And I belong to no one. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Kalen's face, revealing slightly elongated canines. Is that so? A witch without a master. Rare. He glanced at the moonshade in my hand. You're suppressing the awakening. Why? The vampire castle is full of willing nobles. I have no interest in trading my freedom for a few hours of relief, nor do I wish to be a vessel for the undead. I replied, carefully wrapping the herb in a silk cloth. I prefer to master my own magic. Kalen stared at me for a long moment, the intensity in his gaze stripping away all pretenses. In my past life, I had barely spoken to him at Covenant gatherings. I only saw him from afar, a terrifying beast to be avoided. Now, I saw the sharp intellect hiding behind the predator's eyes. The woods are dangerous tonight, Lila, Kalen said, his voice dropping an octave, a gravelly sound that sent a strange shiver down my spine. Walk with me. I'll ensure no lesser predators mistake you for prey. I hesitated, then nodded. Thank you, Kalen. As we walked back toward the edge of the vampire territory, a strange, unspoken understanding settled between us. We were two anomalies, a Leaken king who valued intelligence over submission, and a witch who rejected the very nature of her curse. When we parted at the iron-wrought gates of the Shadow Castle, Kalen caught my hand. His skin was burning hot against my cool fingers. If the cold of the vampires ever becomes too much to bear, little witch, he murmured, his amber eyes locking onto mine. The Leaken territories are always warm. I pulled my hand away, but I didn't break eye contact. I will remember that. Chapter 3. The Parasite. 2 months later, the castle erupted in celebration. Ella was pregnant. Against all odds, despite her weakened state, the vampire seed had taken root. Alex was ecstatic. He draped her in diamonds, moved her into the Grand Master suite, and ordered a feast that lasted 3 days. To the outside world, Ella was the triumphant future queen, the darling of the Blood Clan. But I saw the truth. I watched from the corners of the grand dining hall as she sat beside Alex, smiling radiantly, accepting the toasts of the vampire lords. But beneath the heavy layers of enchanted makeup, her skin was graying. The whites of her eyes were faintly yellow. When she raised her crystal goblet, her hand trembled violently. She didn't understand. She thought the fatigue was normal. She thought the pain in her bones was just the burden of carrying a royal heir. She didn't know that a pure-blood vampire fetus was not a child, it was a parasite. In my past life, I possessed a remarkably vast magical core, honed by years of quiet meditation and herbalism, which I had practiced in secret while Ella stole the limelight. When I carried Alex's child, my magic fought a brutal, daily war against the fetus to keep my organs from shutting down. I bled, I starved, and I suffered, but my core regenerated just fast enough to keep me alive until the birth. Ella's magical core was shallow, fueled entirely by vanity, spite, and the artificial boosters the Covenant elders had given her. It was not enough. The fetus was already beginning to cannibalize her life force. One evening, I was summoned to her chambers. The opulent room was stiflingly hot. Ella sat before her massive vanity mirror, gripping a silver brush. As I entered, she turned to me, and I had to suppress a gasp. Without the glamour spells and makeup, she looked horrifying. Her cheeks were hollow, her lips cracked and bleeding. When she ran the brush through her hair, a massive clump of her beautiful, golden locks came out by the roots. She stared at the hair in the brush, her eyes wide with terror. Then she looked at me, her expression instantly twisting into a mask of pure hatred. "What are you staring at?" she hissed, throwing the brush at me. It clattered harmlessly against the stone floor. "You look tired, sister," I said softly, picking up the brush. "I am carrying the future of the Blood Clan," she screamed, though her voice lacked its usual power, sounding reedy and thin. "Of course I am tired. Alex says the child is exceptionally strong, a true pureblood." "And what does the physician say about your health?" I asked, stepping closer. Ella flinched. He says I need to rest. He gives me blood tonics. But they burn. Everything burns, Lila. Why does it hurt so much?" For a fleeting second, the arrogant facade dropped, revealing the terrified girl beneath. "Because the child requires immense magic," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "More than a normal witch can provide." "I am not normal," she snapped, the vulnerability vanishing as quickly as it came. "I am the chosen bride. I am better than you. I will survive this, and when I am queen, I will have you banished to the human slums." I bowed my head. "As you wish, Ella." I turned and walked out. There was no saving her. She had built her own pyre, and now she was demanding a crown to wear while she burned. Chapter 4. The rot behind the glamour. By the 5th month of her pregnancy, the illusion shattered completely. Ella could no longer walk. Her legs had atrophied, her magical core entirely depleted. She lay in the massive four-poster bed, looking like a mummified corpse with a grotesquely swollen, pulsing belly. The vampire elders stopped visiting. The grand gift ceased. The castle staff whispered in the corridors, their eyes filled with contempt. They knew she was dying, and they didn't care. They only cared about the vessel keeping the heir alive. Alex's true nature revealed itself. He no longer looked at Ella with feigned affection. He visited her chambers only once a week, bringing the royal physicians to check the heartbeat of the fetus. He didn't speak to her. He spoke about her, as if she were a broken incubator. Her heart rate is dropping, the head physician murmured one night while I stood in the shadows, brewing the pain-numbing tea the maids refused to make. Can she last until the 8th month? Alex asked coldly, adjusting his immaculate cuffs. The child can be safely extracted then. If we pump her full of basilisk venom to artificially stimulate her heart, perhaps, the physician replied. But it will cause her unimaginable agony. Do it, Alex ordered without a second of hesitation. The mother's comfort is irrelevant. Only the prince matters. I watched Ella's eyes widen in absolute horror from the bed. She tried to speak, to beg, but her vocal cords were too weak. Tears leaked from her sunken eyes, tracing paths down her hollow cheeks. She looked at Alex, the man she had betrayed me for, the man she had murdered me for in a past life, and finally saw the monster beneath the beautiful aristocratic mask. Then her gaze shifted to me in the shadows. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply looked back, my eyes cold and empty, reflecting the exact same indifference she had shown me when she pushed me off the cliff. After Alex and the physician left, I approached the bed. Ella reached out a skeletal, trembling hand, her fingers weakly grasping the fabric of my dress. Lila. She wheezed, her breath smelling of decay. Help me. How? I asked softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. Should I ask Alex to spare you? He won't. You heard him. You are just a vessel. The ritual. She gasped, her eyes bulging with a desperate, manic light. The library. I read a soul transfer. I froze. Of course. Even on her deathbed, her greed and malice knew no bounds. She hadn't just been lying here crying. She had been searching for a way out. A dark magic ritual to transfer her consciousness, or perhaps the burden of the fetus, to another witch. To me, there is no such ritual. I lied smoothly, pulling my dress from her grasp. There is, she hissed, a sudden, terrifying burst of adrenaline fueling her. Red Moon, the cliff. Take me there, switch the curse, you owe me. You are the younger sister. I stood up, looking down at her wretched form. I owe you nothing, Ella. You stole this fate. Now endure it. I walked out, leaving her weeping in the dark. But my heart was racing. If she knew about the blood swap ritual, she would find a way to execute it. Desperation bred immense, dark power. I needed to be prepared. I needed an ally. Chapter 5. The Leakin's Proposition. I fled to the Shadow Forest that night, carrying nothing but a cloak and my silver dagger. I didn't stop running until I crossed the territorial line into the Leakin Woods. I didn't have to search for him. He found me. Before I could catch my breath, Kalen dropped from the high branches of an ancient oak, landing silently before me. He was fully clothed this time, wearing leather armor that accentuated his massive build. You're running, he stated, his amber eyes scanning my face, cataloging my accelerated heartbeat and the scent of fear I couldn't quite mask. My sister is planning to use a forbidden ritual on the night of the Red Moon, I said, getting straight to the point. She intends to transfer the vampire fetus to me, or drain my life force to sustain herself until birth. Kalen's jaw tightened, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Vampires and their filthy magic. Why come to me, Lila? Why not run back to the Covenant? The Covenant would sacrifice me in a heartbeat if it meant preserving their alliance with the Blood Clan, I said bitterly. They only care about power, just like Alex. Kalen stepped closer, closing the distance between us until I had to tilt my head back to look into his eyes. And what do you care about, Lila? He asked softly. Survival. Freedom. I swallowed hard, the proximity of him making the suppressed witch fire in my blood stir. And justice. Kalen raised a hand, his rough, callous fingers gently brushing a stray lock of hair from my cheek. The contrast between his lethal strength and his gentle touch was staggering. The Red Moon is in 3 days, Kalen said, his eyes never leaving mine. If she attempts a blood magic ritual on Leakin borders, I have the jurisdictional right to intervene. But I cannot interfere with vampire royal affairs unless I have a legitimate claim. I frowned, confused. A claim? Kalen's hand slid down to cut my jaw, his thumb resting against my pulse point. If you are under my protection. If you are mine. My breath hitched. In the witch's lore, a Leakin mating was a bond of absolute equality, a sharing of souls. It was permanent. You don't know me, Kalen, I whispered, though I didn't pull away. I know that you refused the easy path, he replied fiercely. I know that you walk through a castle of monsters without losing your humanity. I know that my wolf hasn't stopped howling for you since the night I saw you in the moonlight. He leaned down, his forehead resting against mine. Be my queen, Lila. Let me tear apart anyone who tries to harm you. I closed my eyes. For 2 lifetimes, I had been a pawn, a victim, a silent survivor. Now, I was being offered a partnership. A true fiery, undeniable bond. Yes, I breathed. Kalen didn't hesitate. His lips crashed down on mine, hungry and claiming. The kiss ignited a firestorm within my magical core. The moonshade herb I had been taking to suppress my desires was instantly overwhelmed by the raw, intoxicating power of the Lichen King. As his teeth gently grazed my bottom lip, a surge of golden magic erupted from my core, intertwining with his feral energy. The mating bond snapped into place, a tether of pure, unbreakable light forging our souls together. When we finally pulled apart, both of us breathless, Kalen's amber eyes were glowing with fierce satisfaction. Let her try, Kalen growled, wrapping an arm securely around my waist. Let them all try. Chapter 6, The Red Moon Festival. The night of the red moon arrived, bathing the world in a sinister, bloody glow. The castle was in an uproar. Ella had gone into premature labor. The basilisk venom had kept her heart beating, but her body had finally reached its absolute limit. The pureblood fetus, sensing the imminent death of its host, was fighting its way out, tearing her apart from the inside. Alex and the elders were gathered in the antechamber of the master suite, waiting like vultures for the prize. But Ella had one last trick. Using a dark, illegal artifact she had bribed a rogue warlock to smuggle in, a teleportation scroll fueled by her last drop of life force. She bypassed the vampire guards. I was standing on the balcony of my small room when the space behind me warped and twisted. Ella materialized, collapsing onto the stone floor in a pool of her own blood and amniotic fluid. She looked like a demon dragged straight from hell. Her eyes were completely black, corrupted by dark magic. Lila, she hissed, crawling toward me, a jagged obsidian dagger clutched in her skeletal hand. I didn't run. I simply turned and looked at her. You look terrible, sister, I said calmly. Take it, she screamed, lunging at me with a speed born of absolute madness. She grabbed my arm, her dagger slicing across her own palm, preparing to press her bloody hand against my chest to initiate the blood swap. Take this curse. Give me your life. As her bloodied hand slammed against my chest, she began chanting the ancient, forbidden incantation. But nothing happened. The dark magic flared, then violently rebounded. A shield of brilliant, golden amber light erupted from my skin, the protective ward of the Lichen mating bond, infused with my own purified witch magic. Ella shrieked as the rebound hit her, throwing her backward across the room. She hit the stone wall with a sickening crunch. No, she wailed, coughing up black blood. Why? Why won't it work? You are just a weak, pathetic spare. I am the Lichen Queen, I said, taking a step toward her, my eyes glowing with unrestrained power. My soul is bound to Kalen. Your cheap, desperate dark magic cannot penetrate a true bond. Ella stared at me in horror, the realization finally crashing down upon her. She hadn't just lost the prince. She hadn't just lost her life. She had lost to me. Suddenly, the doors to my chamber were ripped off their hinges. Alex stood in the doorway, his eyes crimson with fury, flanked by a dozen vampire guards. He took in the scene, Ella bleeding out on the floor, the dark magic lingering in the air, and me, standing untouched. What have you done, you wretched creature? Alex roared, stepping into the room. But he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Ella. You dared to use teleportation magic during labor? You could have harmed the heir. Alex. Ella sobbed, reaching a bloody hand toward him. Help me, save me please. Alex didn't even look at her face. He looked at her convulsing stomach. Hold her down, he ordered his guards. Cut the child out. Now. No, Ella screamed, her voice tearing her throat as the guards seized her limbs, pinning her to the cold stone floor. Alex, no. I am your bride. I am your queen. You were a vessel, Alex said coldly, drawing a surgical silver blade from his coat. And your usefulness has expired. I turned away, unable to watch, though I felt no pity. This was the exact fate she had chosen when she stole my glory. A horrific, gut-wrenching scream tore through the room, followed by the sickening sound of flesh being parted. Ella's screams abruptly cut off into a wet, gurgling gasp. Silence fell over the room. I waited for the cry of a newborn. I waited for the triumphant shout of the vampire prince holding his pureblood heir. Instead, I heard a collective gasp of revulsion. I turned back. Alex was standing over Ella's mutilated corpse, his hands covered in blood. But he wasn't holding a beautiful, pale vampire infant. He was holding a monster. The child was twisted, covered in grotesque, patchy scales instead of smooth skin. Its eyes were solid milky white, and its jaw unhinged to reveal rows of jagged needle-like teeth. It didn't cry. It hissed, a demonic, grating sound. What? What is this? Alex whispered, stepping back, almost dropping the creature. It's karma, I said, my voice slicing through the horrified silence of the vampires. Alex snapped his head toward me, his fangs descending. What did you do to my heir? I did nothing, I replied, standing tall. Ella consumed her own magical core with jealousy, vanity, and ultimately dark magic. A pureblood vampire fetus absorbs everything from the mother. It absorbed her malice. It absorbed the holy silver she drank at her engagement. It absorbed the dark teleportation magic. You didn't breed a savior, Alex. You bred an abomination. Alex let out a roar of absolute, unhinged fury. He dropped the creature, which scurried into the shadows with a horrifying speed, and lunged at me, his claws aimed at my throat. He never reached me. The balcony doors shattered inward in an explosion of wood and glass. A massive, 8-foot-tall lichen beast crashed into the room, tackling Alex midair. The two apex predators hit the floor in a tangle of claws, fangs, and blood. Kalen roared, his massive jaws snapping inches from Alex's face. The vampire guards surged forward, but Kalen's pack members poured in through the balcony behind him, filling the room with the terrifying, deafening snarls of fully shifted werewolves. Kalen pinned Alex to the ground, his massive claws digging into the vampire prince's chest. He didn't kill him. Starting a full-scale war here would be messy, but he held him down with humiliating ease. Kalen shifted back into his human form, though his eyes remained glowing amber. He looked down at the bleeding, defeated vampire prince. This witch is my mate, Kalen growled, his voice vibrating through the stone. If you or any of your blood-sucking leeches ever come near her again, I will tear this castle down stone by stone and leave you to burn in the sun. Do we have an understanding? Alex, choking on his own blood, glared up with absolute hatred, but he gave a curt, jerky nod. Kalen stood up, turning his back on the prince. He walked over to me, his expression softening instantly. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me against his warm, solid chest. Are you hurt? He murmured into my hair. Not a scratch, I smiled, burying my face in his neck, inhaling the scent of pine, earth, and safety. I looked over Kalen's shoulder one last time. Ella lay dead on the floor, her eyes wide open, frozen in an eternity of horror and betrayal. In the shadows, the deformed creature she had birthed hissed, a vile reminder of the vampire royalty's ruined lineage. They had nothing left. Let's go home, Kalen said, lifting me effortlessly into his arms. Yes, I whispered. Let's go home. Epilogue: A New Dawn. 5 years later. The Blood Clan never recovered from the scandal of the Red Moon. The birth of the mutated child proved that Alex's bloodline was cursed. The vampire elders deposed him, stripping him of his regency. He spent his remaining days locked in the darkest dungeons of the Shadow Castle, attempting to cure the monstrous child that despised him. The Witch Covenant, horrified by the fate of Ella and terrified of the Lichen King's wrath, reformed their ancient laws. No longer were young witches forced to seek out partners for the sake of political alliances. I stood on the balcony of the Lichen stronghold, overlooking the vast, beautiful expanse of the Silverwood Forest. The sun was setting, painting the sky in strokes of brilliant gold and violet. I didn't need to suppress my magic anymore. Bound to Kalen, my power flowed freely, perfectly balanced by his fierce, unwavering love. I had become the High Witch of the West, a bridge between the Lichens and those of my kind who sought refuge from the archaic rules of the old world. Strong arms wrapped around my waist from behind. Kalen pressed a warm kiss to my shoulder. The pack elders are asking when the queen will grace them with her presence at the feast, he rumbled playfully. Tell them the queen is enjoying the sunset, I replied, leaning back against him. A tiny joyous squeal erupted from the courtyard below. Our 3-year-old daughter, Ilara, was chasing a glowing butterfly, her small hands sparking with a gentle, golden magic, entirely unburdened by the dark desires that plagued my ancestors. In my past life, I had sacrificed everything for a crown of thorns, believing that duty and suffering were the only paths to survival. I had died in despair, betrayed by my own blood. But in this life, I had let the greedy take the poison, and I had walked away to find the cure. I turned in Kalen's arms, looking up into the amber eyes of the man who had offered me a true partnership, and smiled. The nightmare was over. I had finally found my forever.